If you had told me 2 years ago that I'd be asked to speak in Providence about pandas and pans, I would have looked at you all crazy and said, why the hell would I go to Roger Williams Zoo to talk to pandas about Cathalon and Allclad? January 2011. Last month, my friend Ivy lost the diamond in her wedding ring. This happened just a few days after her dog ended up in the animal ER with a massive stomach ulcer, and a few days before her 9-year-old son ended up in the human ER with a cracked head. Since bad things come in threes, I figured Ivy was off the hook for a while, unaware the worst was yet to come. Because Ivy is smart, irreverent, unafraid, and totally, almost weirdly competent, I was shocked when I called her home in Connecticut 2 weeks ago and she answered, "Oh my God, Suzanne, Lila's talking about suicide. She won't go to school. Shit, she won't even leave the house." Fear now choked her voice into a sob. I'm afraid to leave her alone. Lila is Ivy's 11-year-old daughter. Yes, 11. Her sun-kissed blonde hair frames a heart-shaped face with blue eyes so clear they make the crystalline waters of Hawaii look dirty. This child says, "I love you," often and with conviction. She likes to spend her allowance buying presents for others and prefers reading to video games. When I last saw Lila, she seemed like a normal, well-adjusted kid. A day after this phone call, I boarded a plane for Connecticut. I took Adrian with me, hoping his joyous spirit could counteract Lila's despair. There was nothing else to do for my friend other than to physically be there for her. When we arrived, Lila threw her arms around us, smiling, but the moment Ado ran outside to check the backyard chicken coop for eggs, her face turned serious. "He doesn't have the stomach flu, does he?" She asked it like it was the equivalent of Black Death. "No, honey," I answered, hugging this little girl with big girl problems. "He's fine." The intense, irrational fear of vomiting, called emetophobia, is Lila's biggest fear. It's considered one of the phobes include Cameron Diaz, Matt Lauer, and James Dean. By the way, we should check out Matt Lauer and Cameron Diaz. Maybe there's something Dr. T could get to the bottom of here. But Lila's is now debilitating. Lila refuses to go to school, drive in the car with other kids, get on an airplane, or eat at restaurants. When I tried to cheer her up by promising to take the whole family to dinner the next night to celebrate her brother Ben's birthday, her eyes went blank. No thanks. That was way too scary for her. So we were hostage in our own home. After the kids were asleep, Ivy and I sat in our kitchen in our PJs, one glass of wine, not nearly enough to beat back her crappy reality. "I've been with her for 4 weeks straight," she said, and I realized Ivy's a hostage too. It's like having an infant that doesn't take a nap. When I reached over to hug her, Ivy laughed, but it sounded edgy and scared. "I think I'm going crazy too," she continued. "How the hell did this happen?" Ivy checked her daughter into a psychiatric ward of a local hospital the day after I arrived in New England. Lila was upbeat, packing her favorite stuffed animals, diary, and a toothbrush as if she was going to a sleepover at the American Girl store. While Mom and Dad filled out insurance paperwork, talked to psychiatrists, and tried to find an available bed in the crowded mental health system for their daughter, I took Ben and Adrian bowling. "Hey," Ben said, pointing to the big sign over one of those self-test blood pressure machines. "Are you under stress? Mom and Dad should come here." We laughed, but I felt sad that this 9-year-old boy was caught in a maelstrom, not of his own making. His very stressed parents didn't get home until after midnight. Putting your kid in a psych hospital takes time, in addition to breaking your heart. The hand-drawn paintings on the walls of Floor 3 East greet visitors with positive messages. "Laughter's the cure. Don't give up." This is good advice to follow in a psych hospital if you can manage it, looking into the blank and broken faces of the kids roaming the halls in sweats or pajamas. But only one sign captured the ambiance of a child's psychiatric ward. "Every tear is a waterfall," it said. The words written amidst a cacophony of colors. That's what it must feel like to be an unhappy, unbalanced child, I thought. A constant drip of sorrow and fears that threatened to drown you. Lila's room was large, cold, and spare. "She thinks I tricked her," she explained. "She doesn't realize she's going to be here with other kids and in group therapy." "Well," I reasoned, searching for the positive, "at least she'll have to face her fears." "Yeah," Ivy laughed. "The first thing she asked the doctor this morning is whether any of the other kids had the stomach flu. It'd be the last time my friend smiled that day." "I want to go home, Mom," Lila said, fear coloring her cheeks a delicate pink. Her high-pitched whine turned into a sob when Ivy said that it wasn't possible. Once you commit a potentially suicidal child, there's a mandatory 72-hour waiting period before you can get her out. Lila's dad took Ben and Adrian outside to try and catch the snowflakes that had begun to fall. "Please, Mom, I'll do anything," Lila cried, pushing Ivy away as she tried to hug her. Her body got more rigid as panic took over, and then, as if a black and white filter had suddenly been placed over a color picture, Lila's face changed completely. "I'll kill myself if I can't go home," Lila said. "I'd rather feel bad forever than to stay in here." In pink sweats and a t-shirt printed with the word love, Lila looked like a child, but her voice had that cold, flat tone of a determined adult. Next door, a group drumming session had started, kids trying to exercise their fears with music, an incessant rhythm that ramped up the drama. "I'll jump out that window if you leave me, Mom." "Please don't, honey," I begged, tears rolling down her face. I wiped my tears away myself, a wave of nausea sweeping through me, and got up to leave the room before I threw up. "I'm sorry, Mom, but I'll do it," Lila said as I walked into the white, empty corridor. "You better say goodbye right now." When Ivy walked out of Lila's room, her suicide threats echoing like small screams in a pale, empty hospital corridor, my heart felt broken. I wanted to tell Ivy to bring on tough love. I wanted to say that Lila was manipulating her, and she had to quit rewarding this behavior. But then I imagined it was my son who was trapped in a cage of his own fear, grasping through the bars with little hands and begging me not to leave, and I knew I could never walk away. So I just hugged my friend, her eyes raw from a barrage of tears, as we took the elevator down from 3 East to the ground floor, where we could see Ben and Adrian trying to catch the snowflakes outside, pink-cheeked and laughing. "I don't want him to see me like this," Ivy said, and headed for the bathroom to pull herself together. Ben needed her too, so the luxury of falling apart on his 10th birthday would have to wait. Lila spent nearly 2 weeks in the inpatient psych ward before her soft-spoken doctor, the Mr. Rogers of child psychiatry, granted her a 4-hour pass. Before she left, he asked Lila to name 4 things that she worries about and to rate them on the fear level that might cause her outside. Riding in the car with Ben, an 8. Being around trash cans because people throw up at them, a 6. Going to the mall, 6. Eating in a restaurant, a 7. Using breathing techniques learned in group therapy, Lila made it to the mall with her mom and Ben. They shopped at Nordstrom Rack, had lunch, the looming, lurking trash cans scary but manageable. But the breakthrough that fanned hope like gasoline does a fire came during the drive home back to the hospital. "Hey, Ben," Lila delighted. "I'm in the car with you and I'm a 0. The significance of this milestone settled into her face. It's been a long time since I've been a 0. "Who would have ever thought that a trip to the mall would be such a momentous triumph," Ivy told me later on the phone, and then took a long, cleansing breath. After a 5-day wait, Lila was moved from 3 East to a CBAT ward, where she would get intensive therapy. Now, while Lila is in session, Ivy lies on her daughter's bed, researching obsessive-compulsive disorder and drug side effects. Some days Lila makes progress, and others, she falls back into the abyss of rage, frustration, longing, and fear. Both Ivy and her husband, whose financial situation has deteriorated to the point where they must sell their house to pay bills, hold on tightly to keep from falling in alongside her. The other day, one of the moms at school asked me what I did over winter break, Ivy said. Having just gloated about their trip to the Bahamas, I told her I spent it in the loony bin with my daughter to the tune of 20 grand. Even though there's nothing funny about a child with mental illness, that brief burst of laughter gave me a much-needed reprieve. It will likely be a long time before Lila's emetophobia recedes to a point where it becomes just another grown-up sounding word. OCD is much more tenacious than any cold or flu. In the meantime, her parents drive back and forth, from home to hospital each day, restructuring their lives around the reality of a troubled child. One of the hardest things about this is having faith that the steps they're taking to help Lila are right. "I'm just a rookie mom doing this without a dress rehearsal," Ivy emailed me on the 17th day of Lila's hospital stay. "Sometimes when I come to a complete stop in my brain and really think about what's happening to my baby, I double over with nausea." Cruel that, no? Hold on, I think to myself. Hold on. My name isn't Ivy, it's Malia, and hers isn't Lila, it's Kayala. We live in Massachusetts, not Connecticut. Those blog posts saved Kayala's life. A PANDAS mom in Los Angeles read them, contacted my friend, Suzanne, the author, and started me on our road back to life with the daughter we knew before PANS, the daughter we thought we had lost for good. 6 pediatric psychiatrists trained at Harvard, Cornell, Emory, Duke, Wesleyan, Stanford, MIT, Tulane, Mayo Clinic, UConn, and Tufts. 8 possible diagnoses: emetophobia, panic disorder without agoraphobia, panic disorder with agoraphobia, obsessive compulsive disorder, social phobia, specific phobia, separation anxiety disorder, anxiety disorder NOS, 6 different psychotropic meds, Celexa and Ativan, suicidal, Prozac and Abilify, suicidal and or catatonic, Zoloft and Risperdal, that tack kind of hurts still, despondent, depressed, rapid weight gain, 25 pounds in 2 months, 60 days of inpatient psychiatric hospitalization at 2 different facilities, 1 lab visit in week 7 of her hospitalization demanded by unconvinced parents and a pediatrician that had tested and treated pandas before. The rest is our climb out of that special kind of hell. Too many of us, all of us, with families of children that have been misdiagnosed with mental illness or suffering. In the winter of 2012, our daughter Kayala, at 11 years, became very ill quite suddenly with psychiatric symptoms that were misdiagnosed and heavily medicated to the point of catatonia and suicide. We are horrified by what she endured at the hands of people that we entrusted to help her. It's imperative that the medical community be educated about PANDAS and PANS so that when a child presents with psychiatric symptoms, they first rule out infection-based causes. We have a moral obligation to all children that we ensure this happens so that no child needlessly endures a world of pain and fear so deep and the sense of helplessness and terror that our child did. It came out of nowhere, a dislike for other children, particularly her brother, vomiting, became an incapacitating obsession that closed in on Kayala and our family. Over the course of a week, she went from being a normal kid to not being willing to ride in the car, go to school, leave our house, and leave her room. She started seeing a psychiatrist that prescribed the Celexa and Ativan, which made her suicidal. Then they tried Prozac and Abilify. Inderol was added. Her mood continued to deteriorate. She started showing OCD behaviors. After 5 weeks of missed school, she was hospitalized. There, too, she was suicidal and continued to deteriorate. She's a tough one to diagnose, they told me. She's complex. She sure is a hard one to figure out. We just have to give the medicine time to take effect. Oh, one day she put a plastic bag over her head. Most days she just passed in a catatonic state. The doctors were looking for a missing piece, the trauma that didn't happen. I found the missing piece. Through that blog, Panda's mom heard Kayala's story, and I was made of PANDAS. I asked her pediatrician to test for it. Sure enough, her results came back consistent with PANDAS. He put her on Augmentin XR. Thank you, Beth and Sammy. And referred us immediately to Dr. Pasternak at Mass General. Within 2 weeks, she was released from the hospital, and her response to the antibiotics allowed her to return to school and finish 5th grade. By the 3rd month on antibiotics, which we switched to Keflex because Augmentin turned her teeth brown, Kayala was doing really well, and we were optimistic she was going to be okay. She flared after the flu mist in September 2012, confirming that she was PANS, not PANDAS. Dr. Trifoletti joined our team later that fall and deciphered mycoplasma pneumonia, which he addressed with Biaxin, and only then were we able to take her off all psychotropic drugs, and we saw 100% of our child again. We know we're blessed. We know we're fortunate that she recovered on antibiotics alone, and we hope she stays healthy. Today, she's a thriving 7th grader. On Friday, she brought home her report card, honors, straight A's, except for math. We're working on it. She hasn't once accessed her IEP. Oh, a kid threw up on the bus the first week of school? No problem. As for the meds, she's still on a prophylactic dose of Keflex. We like to get a little bit less of that. She's on a great probiotic, and that's it. She's my amazing, strong, fun, brilliant, beautiful daughter, Kayala.